I'm Carl Bruch. I am an attorney with the Environmental Law Institute in Washington, D.C., where I co-direct our international programs, and we have an ocean program there that builds upon a lot of the other work that ELI has done with partners to build capacity for compliance and enforcement. How do you make law work? And at the Global Forum, we have been co-chairing a working group on compliance and enforcement with the European Commission. This working group is trying to identify the challenges, the experiences, the needs, and opportunities for improving compliance and enforcement. Why is compliance and enforcement important? Well, we go to a lot of effort to develop laws, institutions, international agreements. But if people don't actually comply with them, if they don't actually fulfill their obligations, or countries don't fulfill their obligations, we're not able to reach those goals. We're not able to have sustainable management of our coasts, of our fisheries, of our marine ecosystems. So if we want to reach the goals of all the other things we're talking about, whether it's fisheries or community livelihoods or clean ecosystems, we need compliance. And compliance includes a variety of tools. These include incentives, information, and enforcement, and capacity building, so that people and countries and organizations are able to comply with the law. What are some of the challenges? Well, there are many. And this, I think, is part of the reason that we see the development of so many laws and institutions, but so little compliance to date. Often the laws are not sufficiently clear. They only apply to certain areas, but not to other areas. And so we often find that the laws are insufficient. There's not enough capacity. And in many places, in developing countries, we're talking about a range of sea that extends 200 miles out from land. And especially for small island developing states, they don't have the technical capacity, the personnel, the financial resources, the data, all the things that they need to effectively monitor and conduct surveillance, let alone pursue enforcement actions. So there isn't the capacity. There often isn't the political will. Coordination is a big issue. Coordination between countries, but then also coordination between levels. You have some global institutions. You have regional fishery organizations, regional economic organizations, country agencies, communities, maybe something in between states or provinces. And coordination among these different levels is quite a challenge. The working group has been talking about what are the challenges and what are the opportunities. And we've identified a number of cross-cutting opportunities, how to build compliance and enforcement across sectors, from shipping to land-based sources of pollution to fisheries and other sectors, but also how to build capacity in specific sectors. First of all, it's important to develop a culture of compliance. And that is going to require a lot of awareness raising and capacity building. Secondly, we need to learn from our experiences. What's worked to date? There's a lot of experience out there, both in the context of oceans and coasts, but also more broadly, looking at biodiversity experiences, or experiences from biodiversity management, from shipment of hazardous waste, from controlling trade in illegal products, whether it's wildlife or hazardous waste or ozone-depleting substances. There are a lot of approaches for promoting compliance and enforcement that work, and we can learn from them in the ocean sector. We need to build support. We need to improve information management, the collection of information, the sharing of it, the use of it, the dissemination. We need to develop more effective market-based mechanisms, market-based approaches. Some of these can be eco-labeling that target the consumer. Others are more oriented oriented toward states or toward vessels, so that on the supply side, that if you want access to a market, you have to comply with certain regulations, and you have to prove that you have complied with these regulations. There's been a lot of discussion about the role of public participation in non-governmental organizations, and improving the sanctions regimes. And in some cases this is increasing the penalties so that they are sufficient to deter violations. In other cases it may be actually reducing the penalties where the penalties are too high to be relevant to local fishermen. Or it may be something other than penalties. There are opportunities to do what are called restoration projects, to, if somebody's been dynamiting a reef, to try to restore the reef, or to clean up oil spills, not just paying a fine. And so there are a lot of different ways, different approaches to sanctions that can be developed that are not necessarily well developed yet. We've identified a few next steps going out of this global conference. One of them is to continue the dialogue. We've started a discussion among different professionals. We need to bring more people in. We need to bring in more economists. We need to bring in the compliance enforcement people. Most of the people here are ocean people. And we need to bring the compliance and enforcement people into the discussion. We need to get a broader range of perspectives, and that is one of the goals as we move from the global conference. Secondly, we would like to develop a political message and technical resources. Something short and concise that highlights the importance of compliance and enforcement at a high level. And then resources that identify how do you do it. How do you actually promote compliance and enforcement? What are different approaches that might be relevant at different levels or in different geographic regions? So near the shore, in the exclusive economic zone, there's the 200-kilometer buffer from land, and then on the high seas. And there are different legal regimes, different institutions that apply. And then to get compliance and enforcement on the ocean agenda. Some of this may be a broad context, like with the United Nations, but then also more locally or at the national level. So we've had a very rich discussion, very interesting discussion, and we look forward to the years to come as we work on this.